Welcome back to another tutorial. Today we will be knitting the Bizerte sweater. This is an oversized raglan sweater that is worked from the top down in 2 color stripes. We will be knitting the 3-month size together today, but if you would like to knit a larger size up to 3 to 4 years, there is a pattern available on both Ravelry and Etsy, which you can find in the links down below. In my original samples, I used knitting for all of heavy merino, but today I am using Cascade 220 Superwash. I used a US 7 4.5 millimeter needle with a 16 inch and 32 inch cord, as well as a US 4 3.5 millimeter needle, again with 16 inch and 32 inch cord. You'll also need a tapestry needle, scrap yarn or stitch holders for putting the sleeves on hold. You will need 9 stitch markers, but ensure that one is different for the beginning of round marker. I'm going to link my favorite jogless stripes technique down in the description. Today we will be just knitting our stripes as is, so no extra fuss. You can see the difference here. I personally do not mind the additional detail down the back, but again, that tutorial will be linked down below if you would like to add in jogless stripes. Otherwise, be sure to follow me on Instagram at Kabora Knits if you would like to stay up to date with all future patterns. And with that, let's get started. We will be getting started with our 3.5 millimeter needles with the 16 inch cord and color 1. We're going to be working a long tail cast on, so go ahead and grab a long tail of yarn here and we will make our slip knot. So I'm going to start with my index finger, loop the yarn around once, twice, and one more time. Go ahead and grab the middle strand of yarn and pull it over top of the yarn at the end of your finger. Grab the middle strand again, pull it over top, and one last time. And you can pull it off your finger now. I'm going to grab my needle, place the slip knot on, and fasten it here. So this counts as 1 stitch. We are going to be casting on a total of 66 stitches. So that means I need to cast on 65 more. For the long tail cast on, I'm going to go under the bottom strand, grab the top strand, and pull through. You don't need to be pulling super tight. We're just going to secure it on the needle. Again, under the bottom strand, grab the top strand, and secure. So there's 3 stitches. One more time. So you are casting on a total of 66 stitches. Go ahead and finish that up. I have my stitches cast on, and now we are going to be joining in the round. So I'm going to bring my needle tips together, and it's going to be a little bit tight for this first round, but after we work a round or two, it's going to feel comfortable again. So go ahead and bring your needle tips together and grab the stitch marker that is different from the rest. So the one that is not like the other 8, and this is now going to be our beginning of round marker. All right, we are going to start with a knit 1, purl 1 ribbing. Again, you're gonna have to stretch those stitches just a little bit on this first round. So I'm going into the first stitch with a knit 1, purl 1, shifting things down again, knit 1, purl 1. So you're going to continue knit 1, purl 1 all the way to the end. Back at the beginning of round, I'm going to slip my marker and we're going to do the same thing, knit 1, purl 1 all the way around for one more round. We have completed our 2 rounds in knit 1, purl 1 ribbing, and now we are going to add in some short rows in this collar to help raise the back of the neck. So we're going to start by working 17 stitches in pattern, so still in our knit 1, purl 1 patterning. I'm going to work 17 stitches. So there's 1, 2, 3, keep counting up to 17. I've worked 17 stitches in pattern, and I am going to turn my work to the wrong side. We will now make a double stitch, so I'm going to take the first stitch on my left hand needle and slip it over to my right hand needle. I'm now going to pull my strand of yarn up and over this stitch, and you'll see we have made a double stitch here. We've pulled the stitch to create 2 legs of a stitch. So there's our double stitch. We're now going to work in pattern back to the beginning of round marker. So I see that this is a knit stitch. You can tell your knits and purls apart because the knit stitches always look like a V and the purl stitches will always have a bump. So I'm starting with knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, back to the beginning of round. At the beginning of round marker, I'm slipping that marker over, and now I'm going to work 17 stitches in pattern once again here on the wrong side. So counting 17 of these knit 1, purl 1 stitches. I've worked my 17 stitches, and now we are turning back over to the right side. I'm going to once again take this first stitch on the left hand needle and pass it over to the right hand needle, pulling up and over, and there's our 2 legs of the stitch. So we've created our double stitch here on the right side. Now we are going to work in pattern again to the beginning of round marker, slipping the marker. Okay, on this side now we are going to work up to this double stitch, and I will show you how to knit that stitch. So go ahead and find the double stitch. All right, I've arrived at the double stitch here, and we are going to work that stitch as if it's 1 stitch in pattern. So you see we have a purl stitch is the last thing we did here. So that means we are going to knit into both legs of this stitch and knit them together as if it is 1 stitch. Next, we are going to work 4 more stitches in pattern. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Go ahead and turn your work. On the wrong side once again, slipping that first stitch over to the right hand needle, pulling up and over, working back to the beginning of round marker and pattern, slipping the marker. Now on this side, we are once again going to go find that double stitch. So work in pattern to the double stitch. I've arrived at the double stitch here. Once again, we have just purled the last stitch. So we are going to knit into the double stitch as if it's 1 stitch, and then working 4 more stitches in pattern. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. Go ahead and turn your work over to the right side, creating our final double stitch here. We are going to pass that stitch over, pull our yarn up and over, and you can go ahead and work in pattern back to the beginning of round marker. Great, we have completed our German short rows, and now we are just going to finish up the collar. You're going to go ahead and work 11 more rounds in knit 1, purl 1 ribbing. So just like those first 2 rounds we did, where we did knit 1, purl 1 all the way around, you're going to do that 11 times where you pass the beginning of round marker, and then we will meet back up for our folded collar. I have completed the ribbing for the collar, and now what we are going to do is fold our collar towards the inside, and we are going to be knitting the live stitches together with the cast on edge. I'm actually going to take this marker off just for right now because it will likely fall off anyways. And we are starting with our first knit stitch here. So you'll see on the inside, this knit stitch has a column that follows directly down to 2 legs of a stitch that we cast on at the beginning. I'm going to go in through my knit stitch. I'm going to follow this column down. I'm going to grab the 2 legs at the bottom here, and I'm going to also knit into that cast on stitch there. So I've pulled the yarn through the bottom, and I've pulled the yarn through my knit stitch, and now I'm dropping it off. So those have been knit together. Let's take a look at the next stitch. The next stitch is a purl stitch, so I am going to follow this column down now, go in through my purl stitch, go in through the stitch at the bottom, pull my yarn through here, and then pull my yarn through my purl stitch and drop it off. All right, so we've worked 2 stitches together there. Next stitch. It's important to occasionally check the column that's running down, because if we start knitting into the, say, column beside, our ribbing is going to appear twisted when we finish our folded collar. So it's good practice to just check that you are following the correct column as you knit into your bottom edge. And we are working all of our stitches all the way around until they have all been knit together. My collar is now complete and we are going to be working our setup round. First, I'm going to take my 4.5 millimeter needles with the 16-inch cord. So the smaller cord, larger needles, and I'm going to slip all of my stitches onto this new needle here, just passing them over all the way around. My stitches are now on my larger needle. I'm going to place my beginning of round marker, and we are going to need the rest of our markers now as we're going to place them around the yoke. We're going to go ahead and start by knitting 10 stitches, still in color 1, and now we are just knitting. We are not knitting and purling. So go ahead and knit 10 stitches. Grab your first marker and place it on the right needle. Now these 10 stitches are for half of the back. Now we are going to be working our raglan stitches. So we're always going to have 4 raglan stitches. So knit 4, place marker. We're going to work the stitches for the first sleeve now, so knit 5, place marker. Our next raglan stitches, so knit 4, place marker. Now we will be knitting across the front stitches, so go ahead and knit 20. After knitting 20 stitches across the front, place marker. We have our next 4 raglan stitches, knit 4, place marker. Our second sleeve will be knit 5, place marker. Our last raglan stitches will be knit 4, place your final marker, and now you should have 10 stitches left to knit back to the beginning of round marker. All right, we are ready to add in our second color. So this sweater is going to be worked in 2 round stripes. So you're always going to work 2 rounds before changing your color again. So I'm going to grab my second color here, place it over my finger, and I'm just going to knit as if this were the old color. All right, so I am knitting for this round all the way around, just slipping markers back to the beginning of round. We're not doing any increases yet. Back at the beginning of round, slipping that marker. Now both the last stitch and the first stitch are going to be loose until we secure them. So just go ahead and give your color 1 thread a tug there, and then also we'll do the same as we start knitting into our color 2 once again. So for the second round with each color, that's when we'll be adding in our increases. So I'm going to go ahead and knit to 1 stitch before this marker. So here's our first marker. I'm going to knit to 1 stitch before it. Remember, this stitch is loose here, so you're going to give it a tug as you work it. I've arrived at 1 stitch before the marker, and this is where we are going to make 1 right. I'm going to grab the bar of yarn between the 2 stitches on my needles here, and you'll see that it's my color 2 yarn. I am going to place it on the needle as such. And now I'm going to be knitting into this bar of yarn as if it's a stitch. So I'm just going to create a little bit of slack with my thumb, place my needle through that strand and knit into it. I'll show that again. So I have my bar of yarn between my 2 stitches, placing the bar over top of my needle, just giving it a little push forwards with my thumb so that I can go and knit into it. And that is make 1 right. Going to knit 1, slip marker, knit my 4 raglan stitches. These will always just be knit as normal, slip marker. On the left side of each of these raglan stitches, you're going to be doing a make 1 left. First, we need to knit 1, and then I'm going to go ahead and grab that bar once again, but instead of placing it on the needle like this, I'm going to reverse it, place it on the needle backwards. I'm going to go in through the back of that stitch, knit into it, and there's make 1 left. I'll show that one again. So we slipped our marker, we knit 1. I have a bar of yarn here that I am picking up, knitting in through the back of it, grabbing my yarn, and there's make 1 left. All right, now we are knitting again to 1 stitch before the marker. These are the sleeve stitches here, so I'm knitting across the sleeve. Here I am 1 stitch before the marker. I'm going to make 1 right, knit 1, slip marker, knit my 4 raglan stitches, slip marker, knit 1, make 1 left. Knitting across the front to 1 stitch before the marker, 1 stitch before the marker, make 1 right, knit 1, slip marker, knit 4, slip marker, knit 1, make 1 left, knit to 1 stitch before the marker. The sleeves look similar to the raglan stitches at first, so you do kind of need to make mental note. There's only 5 sleeve stitches to start. All right, make 1 right, knit 1, slip marker, knit 4, slip marker, knit 1, make 1 left, and knit to the beginning of round. We never increase at the beginning of round. That's why that marker is different than the rest. Okay, remember the stitch is loose. I'm tightening it up, slipping my marker. And now since we've worked our 2 rounds in our color 2, I'm going to grab my color 1 here, and that's what I will be knitting next. Tightening both strands. As we keep working, those end up securing themselves, and then you will weave in your ends at the very end of your project, and that will help secure it further. All right, so the first round as you switch colors, so every time you start a new color, that first round will be just knit. There will be no increases. The increases follow 2 rounds. So the first round as we switch colors, always plain, no increases. And then the second round, which is our second round with the new color, is going to be an increase round. All right, so this next round here, no increases, just working all the way around in color 1. And I'm going to slip markers as I go. This is round 2 now, and we are going to be increasing. So I'm going to knit to 1 stitch before the marker. I'll do this increase round with you one more time before I let you know how many times you'll be doing it. All right, 1 stitch before the marker, we make 1 right, knit 1, slip marker, knit 4, slip marker, knit 1, make 1 left, knit to 1 stitch before the marker, make 1 right, knit 1, knit 4, slip marker, knit 1, make 1 left, knit to 1 stitch before the marker, make 1 right, knit 1, slip marker, knit 4, slip marker, knit 1, make 1 left, knit to 1 stitch before the marker, make 1 right, knit 1, slip marker, knit 4, slip marker, knit 1, make 1 left, and knit to the beginning of round marker. All right, so you've probably noticed the pattern by now, but we have 4 raglan sections. Before each raglan section, we make 1 right, and after each raglan section, we make 1 left with a stitch in between. So always a stitch before and always a stitch after. All right, so you are going to change back to color 2 now. So I'm grabbing my color 2 yarn, and remember the first round, we always just knit across. All right, so the first round, every time you switch colors, is going to be a knitting round, slipping all markers. And then the second round, once you change colors, is always going to be an increase round. You are going to be completing a total of 13 increase rounds. Okay, so that includes the plain round and the increase round. So that means you're going to be working those 2 rounds, round 1 and round 2, 13 times total. We have already worked 2 increase rounds together. So that means you have 11 more to go. I've now completed the Raglan Increase section. You should now have 170 total stitches on your needles, 46 for the front and the back, 31 for each sleeve, and then you have the 16 Raglan stitches, so the 4, 4, 4, and 4. So 170 stitches total, and we are ready to separate for body and sleeves. I'm back with color 1 here. I am going to knit to the marker. I'm going to go ahead and remove the first marker, knit the 4 stitches, remove the next marker. Go ahead and grab your scrap yarn or stitch holders. And also if you're using the scrap yarn, you'll need your tapestry needle. I'm going to thread the yarn through there. And I'm going to place the next 31 sleeve stitches on hold. I'm just going to slip them onto the needle and then back them up onto the scrap yarn. You can remove the marker that's on the opposite side. I'm now going to tie a bow here. Now we're going to be casting on some stitches at the underarm using the backwards loop method. For the backwards loop method, I'm going to place the yarn over top of my thumb here like this. And I'm just going to slip that yarn onto my needle. So there's 1, again, looping it onto my thumb. There's 2, and we are casting on 3. So there's my final stitch. All right, go ahead and knit across the 4 raglan stitches over on this side. Remove marker. Knit across the front stitches. Removing the stitch marker here, knitting the 4 raglan stitches. Removing the second marker, once again grabbing my tapestry needle and my scrap yarn and placing the next 31 sleeve stitches on hold. Removing the marker at this end, tying another bow. We will be casting on 3 stitches using the backwards loop method on this side as well. So looping over your finger, 1, 2, and 3. Knitting the 4 raglan stitches. Removing the final marker here and go ahead and knit to the beginning of round marker. Great, we are going to continue working in stockinette stitch, so knitting every round, still in our 2 round stripes, until the body measures 5 inches from the underarm here, from where we have divided. You can see I still need 1 more round of my color 1 before I switch, and then I'm just going to continue doing that, knitting 2 rounds and switching all the way until my work measures 5 inches from the underarm. These stitches that we've cast on at the underarms will be a little tricky to knit this first go around, but then they're just going to be normal knit stitches after that. The body is now measuring 5 inches from the underarm, and I have ended with 2 rounds of color 1. So if you have ended with color 2 at 5 inches, that's okay. Just go ahead and add in your 2 rounds of color 1 now, and we will get ready for the ribbing. We are going to change to our 3.5 or smaller needles with the shorter cords, still on the 16-inch cord. We will be working 6 rounds in knit 1, purl 1 ribbing. I'm going to start by knitting all of my stitches onto my smaller needle size, my 3.5 millimeter needles. I've just completed my first round in knit 1, purl 1 ribbing, and we are going to complete 5 more rounds. So you're going to go around, knit 1, purl 1 until you reach the beginning of round marker 5 more times before we start our bind off. I have completed my 6 rounds of knit 1, purl 1 ribbing, and I am ready for the bind off. We are going to be just using a regular bind off today. So I'm going to go ahead and knit into the first stitch, going to purl into the second stitch, so working in pattern, pass the first stitch over top and dropping it off. Now I'm not going to be pulling tightly on this stitch on the needle. We want to just maintain an even tension. So knitting into the next stitch, passing that stitch over, and I'm just continuing in pattern here. And we are going to be continuing this all the way around. At the final stitch here, I've just broken my yarn and I'm going to pass it through that last stitch, and then we will connect this and weave in our end when we are finished. It is now time to get started on the sleeves. So I'm grabbing my long cord 4.5mm needles now for magic loop. I'm going to be placing all of these sleeve stitches that are on hold here back onto the needle, just one by one, slipping them on all the way around. Go ahead and break your yarn and pull it on out there. We are now going to divide our stitches for magic loop. Our first needle is going to have 15 stitches, so go ahead and count 15 and grab the cord and pull it through. The back needle will have 16 stitches for the moment before we pick up our stitches at the underarm. Okay, just to get oriented here, I have both of my needles placed onto the stitches. We are always going to be holding the needles in our left hand, and the tips will be facing our right hand to get set up for magic loop. I'm now going to drop those back stitches off, and we will get started at the underarm here. You'll notice that we ended in 2 rounds of color 2. That means we need to be starting with color 1 here. You'll remember we added 3 stitches to the underarm. 2 of those stitches will be added to needle 1 and 1 of them will be added to needle 2, and that will even out our stitch count. So I'm going to start at the center of the 3 stitches. Pulling my strand of yarn through, going in through the next stitch here. All right, there's 2 stitches. I'm also going to be picking up this bar of yarn here and adding it to my stitch count. So I'm going to place it on my left-hand needle and knit it through the back. I'll show that again. Grabbing this bar of yarn, placing it on my needle and knitting it through the back. Go ahead and knit across needle 1. At the end of needle 1, you can turn your work, place your needle 2 stitches back up onto the needle, drop your needle 1 stitches onto the cord, and now we are knitting across needle 2. At the end of needle 2, I'm looking for that bar of yarn once again. Going to place it on my left-hand needle, knit it through the back loop, and now I'm going to be picking up that final stitch at the underarm here. Turning back to the beginning, I'm always going to be repositioning both needles with the stitches lined up before moving on to the next round. You should now have 36 total stitches, and that means 18 stitches on each needle. I have 1 more round to work in color 1 before we change over to color 2. So I'm dropping my needle 2 stitches onto the cord, and I'm knitting across needle 1. These first couple stitches are going to be loose because we have not secured that end here. So I'm just going to give it a tug. Turning my work, pulling my needle 2 stitches back up onto the needle. My needle 1 stitches are on the cord, and I am working across needle 2. Turning my work. Okay, it is time to add color 1 back in. If you're working those jogless stripes, the beginning of round would be at the center here when you're working magic loop. So that means if you're doing that technique where you're working the final stitch before the stitch marker, it would be that stitch back on needle 2. So you would knit into it, pass it back over, knit your new color, and then continue on that way. All right, so this is technically the beginning of round if you're working those jogless stripes. If you are not working those jogless stripes, you can just go ahead and add in color 2 now, knitting across needle 1 and needle 2. There's 1 round in color 2. Go ahead and add in your next color 2 round again. This end is going to be loose. Just go ahead and tug on it and knit across needle 1 and needle 2 once more with your color 2. All right, we have 2 more rounds to work in color 1 before we add in our first decrease round. So I am grabbing color 1 once again here and go ahead and work 2 rounds in color 1. All right, I'm ready to add in my first decrease round. I'm also going to just tuck these ends in if you haven't done that already. The 2 loose ends can be hidden on the inside for now while we have our working yarn here on the outside. Okay, I'm grabbing my color 2 yarn and I am going to knit 1, knit 2 together, knit across needle 1, I am now knitting to the final 3 stitches on needle 2, and we are going to slip the first stitch, slip the second stitch, and knit those 2 stitches together. I'll show that one more time. So I'm going into this first stitch here, knitwise, slipping it onto the right needle, same thing with the second stitch, and now I am knitting into both of those stitches. That is a slip slip knit, and then knit 1, turning my work. Great, that decrease round is going to be added in on every 7th round. So that means I need to knit 6 more rounds until it's time for that decrease round again on the 7th round. All right, so I will meet you at the next decrease round. It is time for the next decrease on the 7th round here. I am still in color 1 here. So I'm going to knit 1, knit 2 together, knit to the end of needle 1, knitting to the final 3 stitches of needle 2. And here's the final 3 stitches. We are going to slip, slip, knit, knit 1. All right, so we've completed 2 of our decrease rounds together. You're going to do that decrease round 3 more times. So on the 7th round, meaning you have 6 to go before the 7th round, you're going to complete decrease on needle 1 and needle 2. You're going to do it again, and then 1 more time. That will be 3 times completed, and we will meet back up. We need to end in 2 rounds of color 1 as we did for the body. If you see here, I've just completed 1 round in color 2. So I have 1 more round to knit in color 2, and then 2 rounds to knit in color 1 before we get started on the ribbing. I have now ended in 2 rounds of color 1, so I'm going to break my yarn for color 2. You can go ahead and just hide that strand on the inside for now. We'll weave that in later. I'm now grabbing my long cord 3.5mm needles, and I am going to go ahead and knit right onto those for the ribbing. I'm going to hide this needle here, and we will be doing once again a knit 1, purl 1 rib for 6 rounds. So knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, all the way around needle 1 and needle 2 6 times. We will be working the bind off as we did for the body, going into the first stitch and knitting it, purling the second stitch, passing the first stitch over, again not tugging too tightly, knitting the next stitch, and continuing to pass the stitches over in this way, going all the way around needle 1 and needle 2. Do be mindful here that we're not pulling on these stitches. We want to create some elasticity still in this wristband. All right, at the final stitch, break your yarn and pass it through. And we have completed our first sleeve. We are going to be knitting the second sleeve in the exact same way, so you can go ahead and rewind. While I am here, before I start on my sleeve, I'm just going to go ahead and show you how to weave in all of your ends once you are finished your second sleeve as well. So I've just threaded my tapestry needle here with the end of yarn attached to the sleeve. I like to go in through 2 legs of the first stitch that was worked. So you can see that was the last stitch, and here's the first stitch. I'm going in through the 2 legs and joining those together. I'm going to do that a second time just to really secure it. I'm next going to go on the inside of the sleeve, and I'm going to weave this needle in through 3 bars of yarn like that. Pull through. Going to go back the other way, One more time, and then you can trim that end of yarn there. You can join in the same way for the body. So taking that final stitch, threading it through, and then looping it with that first stitch over there. You're also going to need to weave in the ends at the underarms. I usually do these two together. So I will loop them both through the tapestry needle and weave them together. You have your threads at the back of the neck. So once you're done your second sleeve, you can go ahead and weave all of those in, trim them, and then we will be ready to block our project. Wet blocking your sweater is super simple. You're just going to give it a bath in some lukewarm water, let it sit for about 20 minutes. After that, you can gently wring out the water and then give it an extra press with a towel, and you're going to leave it out to dry. Thank you so much for following along with this tutorial today. If you liked it, be sure to give a thumbs up and subscribe. And until the next one, happy knitting.